Welcome to the show, everybody. Thank you for downloading. My name is Pete Wright, and I'm here with Megan Strand.
Hello.
And Dane Christensen.
Hello.
And we are the Naked Marketers, and we've got a great show. Our interview coming up a little bit later is with Chris Skaggs from Soma Games and Code Monkeys, and then we're going to talk about the looming app economy and what you need to do to get your brand ready for getting your own app in the various app stores and in people's hands. But first, we do need to run through just a couple of very quick stories, that relate to our favorite things. Although they're becoming less favorite, I think, between you guys, right? You're not interested in talking about this anymore, right?
It's not that we're not interested in talking about it. It just feels like we should change the name of the show.
The Naked Apple Marketers? Naked Apple Facebookers?
Peter's
we only talk
talking about
things
Apple
that we care about.
Well, it's because this is fascinating. This is why I want your opinion on this story. Okay, so we
ahead.
know about AntennaGate. We know that there are people who feel who when they put their large sweaty hands on their iPhones, they lose signal. And yes, I'll probably get some angry email from the large sweaty.
I believe you said they were large sweaty left-handed people.
Large sweaty lefties,
which
that's
is totally an ADA protected group.
That's right, and they're also communists. Anyway, so we know that this happens. We have video evidence that this happens. Of course it happens. We're sorry it happened. So Apple held their press conference. We talked about it last week that the press conference was going to be Friday. Well, now Friday has come and gone. The press conference has been, and you guys, you didn't see it, did you? You didn't watch it?
I didn't watch it.
Steve,
I read your blog post about it.
Twitter feeds.
I wrote a blog post about
back
it.
rumors.
Steve was pissed.
Yeah, he was pissed.
He was downright angry, caustic. I was going to say swarthy, but I don't think that's the right word.
Well, okay, so talk about what essentially summarize your blog post.
Right. Well,
and talk about
the idea is
what
that
they
here's
did,
the problem.
what the strategy was.
Here's the problem. So they know that there is an issue. They decided it was a design decision. They said, we're going to put the antenna on the outside. That's what we're going to do, and we stand by our decision to do that. The people have spoken. They're frustrated. So Apple says, okay. The people have spoken through the voice of the media. They have not spoken directly to us. And by that we mean we haven't gotten any appreciable call volume. Our return rate is significantly less than the return rate for the iPhone 3GS. All of our data and evidence says we don't have a problem that the media says we do and the vocal sort of blog punditry says we do. And the bottom line is if people would just focus on all the good stuff that's going on with this phone, they'd let go of the fact that, they're watching bars go down. But what we're going to do to try and shut you people up, they did not say this, is number one, we're going to give you all bumpers. The Apple bumper case, which is the rubber bracelet case that goes around the phone. And that makes the problem go away most in 99% of cases.
Or duct tape.
Or duct tape, which is Consumer Reports' kind of flagship bit of idiocy. It's just inane. But the other piece that they did, and this is the question I have for you, they trotted out videos of the major competitive smartphone handsets on a new webpage, antenna performance webpage on apple.com, which illustrates what happens when you hold every one of these smartphones tightly around their antenna. And in some cases, it's around the left side. Some cases, it's around the bottom middle. Some cases, it's putting your fingers up by the ear. And when you hold these phones, the signal drops. The bars drop. So we know this happens to other phones. They even did it with all the other iPhones. It's just the fact that nobody has noticed until now that this happens. But it's been happening all along, right?
Right.
What do you guys think about this idea of bringing the other manufacturers into Apple's game?
So
now, what do you mean by bringing them in?
Well, they didn't have to drag, RIM and Samsung and into this discussion. I mean, these guys. What did these guys do? Nothing.
Well, I think you can, but I think you can really clearly pinpoint what they're frustrated at and what they're kind of saying, but sort of in the way that they're saying. I don't know, and what they're upset about is the fact that. News sites, whether they're news like Newsweek or blog sites like Huffington Post, for instance, those sites have very they're honing some pretty high level strategic skills when it comes to pay or to getting hits to driving traffic, and those sites know that if they can find any weakness or flaw at all and start to blow it out of proportion, it's going to drive traffic with something like the iPhone. So they already know that iPhone hits are going to be huge and any iPhone related news, and they're watching trend data on iPhone related news items, and they just keep churning for mileage, essentially. It's really an interesting thing to watch, not just I don't know if you guys read I don't know who else other than me reads Double X on Slate.com, the female blog, but they did a piece on Jezebel exposing this new host from G4 to The Daily Show, and how they got all this mileage out of calling it a feminist issue, and without, I don't know if anyone read that one, but it was fascinating. But it was a former writer from Jezebel who's writing for Slate who talked about having been at Jezebel, how like the words you're going to use in your headlines or the way you're going to expose something is all about driving traffic. And I think that's what Steve Jobs is essentially saying is, customer satisfaction is actually really high with this phone, but you wouldn't know it reading the news, and it's kind of old to just sort of say like, the media's at fault here. But they really are driving for these stories. And so I think I don't think Apple has a choice. If this is the tack they're going to take, if this is their strategy, to drag the other, hardware sets in there, to drag other competitors to sort of paint a picture. I mean, that's the picture they're from their perspective, they think that's right. That's the truth, and it's not being told.
Well,
right?
and I think it's amusing because some of them they needed to be dragged into the hole because like Nokia and I think Motorola both posted ads saying you can hold our phones any way you want. Well, you know what? Even according to your own instruction manual, there is a place in the instructions for those phones that says don't hold our phone this way or you'll drop signal. So,
it's so interesting because I think Apple would love it if somebody else took that on,
but nobody.
But they're not.
So here's my take on this, because I think I tend to not like it, but at the same time, Apple never does stuff like this. So the fact that Apple is not, in the habit of dragging other companies through the mud per se at press conferences and using this like, ours is just as, it happens to everyone sort of thing, I think it can work for them, but I don't think they should continue to do it. I think if it's, it can be effective in limited chunks, but I think it's dangerous to play that game where, you're kind of taking the rip off the gloves perspective and say, here it is. So it may be true. I'm not saying it's not. It obviously is, but it's not typically, I think, a recommended strategy for dealing with customer complaints. But
well, that's what I kept thinking about was, did they have another choice given the situation?
Well, that's what I think. Yeah, I mean, I think that in this situation they are okay to do it. So.
Well, I think it was a terrific press conference, and frankly, I loved the tone and tenor of the press conference.
You just like it because it's like entertainment.
It is great entertainment, and I love the fact that these executives get up on stage and they're pissed, and I like seeing them pissed, and I like
that is kind of fun.
I like that level of communication.
Unless you're from Scott Evest.
Unless you're from Scott Evest, or you're from RIM or Nokia, in which case you feel like a second grader who just got his lunch money stolen.
So, what other Apple news do we have, Peter?
Move it along.
Megan, we do have some cosplay pictures. If you'd like to talk about your recent events in San Diego, Comic-Con is going on this year. There's a lot of money in San Diego, going on in San Diego right now.
Yeah,
right.
A lot of
and that's all we need to say about that.
I think what's interesting about Comic-Con is that there are a lot of launch properties that we're going to be seeing in the entertainment business. From games, from graphic novels are always sort of where that starts, but games and movies are now being launched in Comic-Con. So is it going on right now? Or
it's going on right as we speak. It just started, I think, last night, I believe.
So we don't have anything really interesting to say other than pictures from last year, which we'll post to the blog because you can never have too many pictures.
Really? Do we have to post that to the blog?
No, we're abso-freaking-lutely.
Really good ones. I do think, though, guys, this is one of those, like, is GameCon the other one? There's Comic-Con, these are historically sort of uber nerd gatherings, but it is very interesting actually to see how other forms of entertainment are finding their way into these conventions, whether it's producers or scriptwriters looking for comic books to turn into movies. I mean, there are actually some stars showing up. They're getting some big name DJs to host parties. It still is pretty much a geek event, but as the growth of like video games and as movies and other forms of entertainment look to diverse creative sources, this actually has a whole lot more legs economically, as you were saying, Peter, than I mean most people in America are just Comic-Con will have come and gone and they will never have known it even existed, but it's a bigger deal than I think it's been given credit for in the past.
Yeah, I think it really is the DNA of the next 2 years, 5 years cycle of entertainment. I mean, that's where this stuff is coming from now.
Yeah, well, we'll be talking about games later in our show.
We absolutely will.
Exactly.
We will also be talking about, and I think this is interesting. Should we talk about the 10 ways Facebook can ruin your life? Speaking of other things you shouldn't be doing with your free time.
But here's the reason I wanted to bring this one up, and it's the exact same reason that we talked about the Apple antenna. I think the exact same things are at play here. Newsweek has an article that is currently on their homepage called 10 Ways Facebook Can Ruin Your Life. So it's just got that dramatic quality to it, right? It isn't an article about how Facebook will indeed ruin everybody's life. But it's just that same sort of play on, okay, here's a hot trending word, Facebook, Daily Show, Apple, iPhone. These were, if you can put, a big brand term like that and pair it with ruin, devastate, all it is an interesting little article on, well, gosh, for all the things Facebook is great at, look out for these 10. So actually it is interesting, and I am going to quickly read through them because they're interesting, but it's really the exact same thing at play, I think, that we were talking about with Apple, that these big news organizations kind of need to continue to maintain some element of controversy with a big trending term. But I liked these. I'm going to read through them. You'll be reunited with your biological parents. Could ruin your life. Your creditors can track you down. Your insurers can deny your claims. Your ex can use it against you in a divorce. It could make you depressed. It could cost you your job. It can out you to your family. So, Pete, look out for that one. It can make it easier for your stalker or abusive partner to follow your movements. You could be sued for libel, or your kids could be targeted by predators. None of these are new. We all knew about all of them. But there they packaged it together, and it's got that dramatic flair. And they've assigned a villain.
Going to the grocery store can do all of those things as well.
Exactly, right?
Well, my comment was, I would say 8 or 7 out of 10 of these have to do with just being dumb.
Alive.
Well, no, dumb. Like, if you're going to be an idiot and post it on your Facebook page, you should expect that your employer might look at it.
Right. Well, that's a
exactly
same old rule. Yeah, assume everything that you say could be put on the internet. I mean, it's not even about everything you post could become public. Everything you do could end up online some way or another.
Exactly.
So, would your mother think that's okay?
Yeah, exactly. Well, and I think this is an interesting lead from Facebook to Twitter, and we have a story about this Twitter mood map visualization that I think is really, really cool. And I am linking it to Facebook because Peter had an interesting comment about how this could be used. So I'll let you save that for a minute. But what researchers from Northeastern and Harvard University did was gather data from Twitter to give us this lovely visual. They actually have a video and a series of visuals that go with it about how U.S. residents feel through a typical day or week. So it's this very cool colored map that almost doesn't even look like the United States, because as the time clock progresses from the beginning of the day through 24 hours, it sort of morphs and ebbs, and the colors change from red, meaning not happy, to green, meaning happy. Different parts of the United States swell as Twitter volumes increase in that part of the state. It's just kind of a neat thing to look at. I don't know I find it hard to believe that they could gauge moods across the United States. But they did find, boys, that West Coast tweets were happier than tweets from the East Coast. So
Is that a surprise?
no,
I wonder how tweets directly from Salt Lake City, if they were generally happy, flowery.
And you would ask that because was it just revealed 2 weeks ago that the happiest place in America is in fact Salt Lake City?
Yeah.
Oh, that explains so much about you, Dane.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
You're there to blow the average.
Well, make your tie into Facebook advertising.
Well, no.
It's
If you're a hardcore data head and you're doing some really, this is all the rage, is doing this really agile response marketing, and particularly with these new tools that we have on like Facebook as a platform, where you can go in and you can drop your ad, over to a highly targeted group, highly targeted, interests and geolocation. It may be interesting to use data like this to say, you know what, I know New Yorkers at around 11 o'clock at night are pretty pissed off at the world, and maybe I'm going to make my ads more aggressive in tone and language than at 8:30 in the morning when they tend to be happier. And and so doing that level of semantic analysis, that gives us a whole new way to think about, or a new tool to support a way that we've already been thinking about how to directly target our ads. And I think that's it makes for an interesting tool. It'd be interesting to see how it becomes more, as the tools evolve to allow us to have that data in more sort of real time.
I agree.
Yeah.
I think it's cool.
I think it's very cool. So what do we have? Is that all that we have on the brain this week?
Pretty much.
Wow, what a fantastically fast week, and it makes it so much easier to bring the smarts.
That's right. Let's do it.
We are thrilled to bring together a very wonderful new guest to the show. Chris Skaggs is the president and founder of Soma Games. Chris, welcome to the Naked Marketers.
Thank you very much.
It seems like we have just so much to talk about. You are, to us, you are most known and most recently as with Soma Games as a developer of G, a game for the iPhone. But you are big in the rest of the industry. You have your fingers in a lot of different places. Can you give us just a brief rundown of what Soma does, what your other entities do before we get into the nuts and bolts?
Yeah, certainly. The other company besides Soma Games is called Code Monkeys, and if you're going to look that up on the web, make sure it's code-monkeys. Otherwise, you're going to get a video game outfit in England. So just for the sake of differentiation,
they really do a lot of
monkeys.
Things about monkeys. That company, they are very seriously invested in monkeys.
They take the monkeys thing like way serious.
Way seriously, man.
Well, the thing is, like, everyone loves monkeys, and so you can really make a living just off being a monkey guy. I mean,
true that. Amen. I'm sorry. All right, so Code Monkeys.
So Code Monkeys started about 10 years ago as a web development shop, and that was at that time where if you could spell HTML, you could get a nice job. And that's kind of the niche we fell into, and over time, that got more and more into the back end where we were doing databases and e-commerce and applications, that sort of thing. And that was a great gig for 8 or 9 years. Come around 2008, I think you'll all remember that the economy decided to throw itself out the window. And in the midst of that Defenestration Act, we found ourselves like just with tumbleweeds around the floor. And Code Monkeys was having a hard time finding another gig. And of course, it was nice to know that it wasn't just us, but it was horrible to know that it wasn't just us. Because then a little bit of marketing or a tweak to your business plan is not going to change anything. But at that same time, we started to kind of get our eyeball on app development. So that was just as the kind of late 2008 was when the iPhone was just starting to really make a lot of news. And we decided we'd throw our hat into the ring, and that's when Soma Games as a brand was created. And we made this little iPhone game. And wait a minute.
In 2008, they hadn't launched the App Store yet, right? Or had they?
They had just, they had actually. It's when late 2008. Like by late, I mean late Christmas, late.
Right.
And it was just starting to get some headlines, but it was still pretty new. And it seemed like an opportunity. We had this idea for Soma Games a couple years prior, but we were targeting the console market for Xbox or PlayStation or something like that, and that cost just a ton of money. So when the iPhone popped up, we realized, hey, we can at least start this video game thing on a lot smaller budget, and so we just decided to take a shot at it. And next thing you know, G was really highly acclaimed. We got so many great reviews. We're really excited, and we had no idea what we were doing, but it was a lot of fun. And so Soma kind of started on its own thing, and G has continued to sell, which is surprising. It's got really long legs for an iPhone game, and then that has led to it being ported over to the Intel App Center. We're getting it to be downloadable for your Mac and your PC. So G continues to grow, as well as we're working now on the sequel called F. Very creative group of people here.
Can you talk just a little bit about what G is for those of our listeners who might not be familiar with this game?
Sure. We created a storyline that's based like out in kind of a steampunk outer space world, and there's these spaceships have sails on them and stern wheels, and so we wanted a really specific look. And then the game G is sort of a puzzle game where there's 50 levels, and every level has sort of a gravity like planets, but these are called asteroids. And then there's the targets around the level, and by using the gravity in the level, you have to shoot your rocket to create a path that goes past all the different targets. And as you do, you have to basically take a picture of them with the sonar. So it's a puzzle game. It's a casual game. But it has some kind of arcade elements because you can use the thrusters on the rocket to adjust your path, and so it was something that we knew was fairly simple on the game mechanic, but that was something we knew we could pull off. We weren't trying to make Halo 3 right out of the gates, and so that's the basic game. And so the name G comes from the primary game mechanic, gravity, and then the sequel F is based on force, and so it's set in the same world, but 10 years later. It's a very different game mechanic. In this one, F is a lot more like, say like pool in space. So you're knocking these rocks around, and you have these different tools you attach to the asteroids to pull them around and get them engaged with one another. So it becomes this gigantic billiard table. But then there's also pirates and bad guys and timing, and so there's a lot of additional elements. And that's kind of what we're doing, and it's been a lot of fun. For me, the fun part about video games is telling stories, and so I just love to make this little story. We got a graphic novel that's now in progress because people really like the story, and so we got a publisher looking at a big old like 60-page graphic novel.
Cool.
We're having a lot of fun with Soma.
And not to the one thing you didn't say about what G is it's beautiful. I mean, it's really very artfully executed, and it's downright addicting to just look at. It is a beautifully and artfully directed game. Talk a little bit about the development experience, developing a game for the small screen like that. What are the things that you go into? What are the considerations that you take into account when you're developing for a small screen, as opposed to, as you were saying, developing for a console?
The biggest thing is user interface, and so you're realizing that you've got people who have relatively chubby fingers who are all working on this itty bitty little screen, and so you have to make sure that any element that you are needing them to interact with is big enough. And so that might seem like a simple thing, but when you're trying to squeeze a lot of information into a little space, you have to do a lot of thinking. How you're sort of stacking your different information. So in our game, you have to configure the rocket. You have to configure how strong is the thrust, how many stages, how long is the burn. So there's quite a lot of information that you have to get in there. And so actually getting the UI to be reasonably effective was quite a challenge. And in fairness, it's not the UI that we would have picked on a console game, just by virtue of how many pixels we have to work with. So for example, when you configure your rocket, you have to go into a whole different screen. If I really had my druthers on, say, an Xbox, the whole thing would be done in one screen because you've got the space to do that.
Right.
But it makes you think really out of the box. You have to do some very different considerations. And then, of course, the horsepower on the iPhone is another big concern. So you have to really limit G is a 2D game, but F is a 3D game, and we have to really think a lot about how many polygons, how are you managing your shaders. So it just can't do the fancy stuff that an Xbox can. So you have to be really deliberate as you plan for that stuff. But that said, it's something you get used to pretty quick. I think the UI is the one thing that really makes the iPhone and the iPad now. There's such a neat way that people are interacting with the touch interface that I think is unique, and I think it really is the secret sauce to why that platform has been so successful.
Well, talk to me a little bit about the iPad then. G does not exist for the iPad right now, right?
It's not. It runs on the iPad great. In fact, if you take the iPhone version and just run it on your iPad, it looks even more beautiful. We didn't have to do anything for that. That's
just the 2x scaling that's built into the display.
Exactly. Yeah. And so you get a little bit of black space around the edges just because it's not the same aspect ratio, but it looks wonderful, and we were really excited about that. We didn't have to do anything. Now F is going to be the iPad as its primary target. We'll also have to make sure we scale it down for the iPhone. But the iPad is kind of its sweet spot. And so we'll be having higher resolution graphics. The iPad's got more horsepower. And of course, in that framework, you have a lot more space for UI elements. And so we get a chance to make that tighter and cleaner. But by and large, you still have the same mechanics of the accelerometer and the touch and the swipe and the gestures. And that sort of thing is really unique compared to, say, the netbook. So when we ported G to the netbook, we had to blow up a lot of the graphics on G, just get more pixels in there so it didn't look really chunky. And you have to map everything from a touch screen and from an accelerometer out to keyboard and mouse controls.
Oh, sure.
So I'm really interested, Chris, if we could take it back a little bit, because now I'm starting to get lost when you guys are talking really technically. But I'm just interested in taking it back to the growth of Soma. I'm interested because, you make it sound so, sort of organic that you kind of, here's an opportunity to develop on the iPhone. A way for you guys to get this video game launched. And then, a couple years later, it's this great, highly acclaimed game. It's got lots of great reviews. You're on the Intel App Up Center. I mean, it's this great, amazing growth. So can you reflect a little bit back on that growth and what, different factors you think are converging to make all of those things happen?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'll tell you one thing is that Soma was already really a fully formed concept way before the iPhone launched. So we had business plans and spreadsheets and all that business, including the majority of our IP, was already laid out before this happened. And so there's this old saying that luck is what happens when opportunity and preparedness meet. And we were prepared for Soma. Like, we were going down the console path. It was already kind of moving along.
Got it.
The opportunity was this new platform, was this iPhone platform, which allowed us the fourth game in our Arc series is still designed to be a platform game. And so what the iPhone did is it said, hey, here's a space where you can spend a tenth or less of the money you would spend on an Xbox game. But also the kind of the nature of the platform really allows us to do these sort of little episodic content things. So the whole idea of G and F and E is going to be the third iPhone game. Those are all designed to be sort of prequels to the game that we already had fully designed. And so most of the storyline was sort of already written. All we had to do is sort of fill in backstory and create a game around that. So we definitely had a lot of stuff that was already prepared on the shelf, ready to go. We also had some core principles, so we didn't just throw this together. So I appreciate your comments about the artwork, and we've had just some awesome artists to work with. But that was also a decision that we'd made a long time ago, that we knew that the visuals and the sound, those had to be really good. And the notion was, so often indie gamers, that's the first thing they skimp on, because if they're programmers, like, either art isn't at the top of their mind as a value, or they're just incapable of, like, they're good coders, they're not good artists. And so often people are trying to throw something together on a shoestring. But we knew that art had to be catching, because if someone sees your game and they're not engaged pretty quickly, they're not going to give it the time of day to learn what it's like.
Well, and to be fair,
I think that's one thing that is.
Well, yeah, to be fair, I mean, G is one of those games that it takes a few minutes to get your head around the concept. It's at once, it's a very steady concept. It's also kind of fragile. And if you don't take the 5 minutes it takes to really kind of figure out the control schema, it can be tricky.
Yeah. And, earlier versions of G, this is one of the things that's just beautiful about the iPhone. Earlier versions of G were things where we had to tinker a lot with UI and with speed and pacing. Like there were some things where, you're just making rookie mistakes, but, we're rookies, so that's fair. And so, for example, the very first version of G was about half the speed, like the rocket moved a lot slower. And for me, what happened in my mind is I was comparing it to games like Gravity Golf. And those tend to be thinkers. And some of these are old Flash games or even old, DOS games. And they're made by designer or for engineers and by engineers, and you're calculating your thrust down to 15 decimal places and stuff like this. And so that's kind of the history of where G comes out of. But on the iPhone, it just didn't really fly, just from a gameplay perspective. So we really had to tinker with some of that stuff. And it still is a thinker game. It's not an action game, but a lot less so than it used to be.
I mull over as I look at what's going on in this economy about the existence of the app economy and what it means that Apple has the more locked down the iTunes store, the App Store, and Android's got their open store, and there just seem like there are so many gated communities now that are popping up around apps. Can you talk a little bit about your experience working, with Apple, being in the App Store, what it's done for you, and maybe what the challenges are, being in this business?
Yeah, and this goes back a little bit to Megan's question: is how this all came together. Is that G was pretty highly acclaimed. We got great reviews, but it's not like it was this breakout seller. So it continues to sell, but we've never been above, I think, about 100th place in the store. And so just to be candid, G doesn't pay the bills. What's happened has been that people saw G, they liked what they saw, and then they would call Code Monkeys to say, hey, can you build our game? And so that's where the other business kind of found its own niche. Is that I didn't imagine that we would reshape around mobile, but just immediately after G came out, and in fact a little bit before that, you throw a $50 Google AdWords out there and says for Code Monkeys, and it said, we've never built an app, but we're willing to try, and we'll give you a great price if you'll take a shot on us. Yeah. And that was really the whole ad, and we had so much traffic, it was shocking.
Wow.
And everyone wanted to get in on the store, and people were just throwing money at weird ideas, and so we probably built a dozen apps that year under the Code Monkeys banner for other people, and that's what kept the lights on. That's what paid the bills, and it also gave us really invaluable experience because so many folks were really trying to press the envelope and do something new, and they had these fantastic and strange concepts that we were just encouraged to build.
Sorry, did you save a copy of that ad so that you could kind of frame that and put that on your wall?
Yeah, we got a snapshot of that. It was really funny because you think that's the silliest ad in the world, but people really responded to it well.
I love that.
And
I love that.
So that bought us the time we needed for John Berquist, as our social media guy. A lot of times social media takes some time to gel, and people have to hear your name. They got to spread the word. But that bought us some time, and we just kept making friends who liked one thing or another, and we've been lucky that we've never been beholden to any particular platform. So, we were writing for Apple and the iThings. Because that's what was going on for a while. But when AppUp came out, we saw a big opportunity there. We wanted to jump in on that. I see an opportunity for Android. What I'm seeing in the market is that as much as they're selling hardware, it doesn't seem that they've quite got the traction on their app store yet. Right. But you can count on us being. And what I imagine happening is that someone's going to respond to another ad that they want to have an Android app out there, and so we'll take their money and learn the ropes. And then that will kind of prime the pump to keep on going. And that's how we've been going, just sort of rolling from project to project. And all the while, Soma's in the background. So Code Monkeys has started to create some of its own products. that are its own brand, sort of thinking a little bit bigger than just the next one-up project app. And in the meantime, we've just had. There's a funny thing is that G's been selling in the iPhone store here for a while, and we just recently started pre-selling downloads for the Mac and the PC. And you'd think that it was a brand new thing. So like we're having this awesome interest in this game that's now a year and a half old, as if they've never heard of it before. Wow. And if you're in that space, maybe you probably never have. So.
Chris, could you talk a little bit about what I was supposed to be asking you about in the first place, which was the ego apps? I'm interested to hear. I really don't know a whole lot about them.
Sure. We first got the idea for an ego app is a fella who does speaking towards high schoolers. And so he's kind of like this motivational speaker. He's this ex-NFL kind of all-star guy. And he was noticing when he's in the high schools talking to these kids that very often they're up there on their handsets doing, he's not even sure if they're paying attention to him. So they're tweeting and Facebooking. And so he came to us asking for a way that maybe he could engage these folks. And so the idea came up of, well, why don't we just give them what they're already doing? Why don't we just make an app for them that they can tweet and look on Facebook and look at pictures, but in this case, at least steer them towards your stuff. So he's got a pretty active social media campaign, and so we came up with this idea for a free app that he would tell about on as he's giving into each event. It comes with their own hashtag that's sort of specific to LeVar's speaking, and then it would also have sort of basic notions of sort of an about us and photo gallery, that kind of jazz. And so the whole concept was, let's make a single app that draws all of your social media things all into one space. As well as, in his case, there's not really a call to action on the end, but for a lot of other people there is. And so if I'm a motivational speaker, I may be selling books or another seminar, or, sign up for level 2 or something like that. And so we knew that there had to be a place for a call to action. And so that kind of just built this idea of the ego app, of anyone whose main business is selling themselves, and especially people who are active with social media. We just wanted to draw all of those embassies and listening posts into one app to let people engage with this viewer. Now, if you're someone who, for example, is selling a book, or maybe you're asking for donations, the idea that you can have all of this stuff instantaneously in front of your listeners, who can right now, they can tweet about you, they can post, they can share your blog with their friends. Give them these tools that are immediate and instantaneous, as well as have that donate or buy now moment, so that when you say something that really inspires them, and they have that instant where, like, man, I really want to support what this fellow's doing. You just put it right there, and so you plug it into PayPal or your own tool, and so rather than doing that bit where at the end of the thing where you say, hey, if you like what I said, we've got a table in the back and you can buy books, or go to our website and you can sign up for the next conference. Just put it right in front of their hands, since they're on their mobiles anyway.
That is so smart.
Thanks. We kind of stumbled onto that. This is one where it was really someone else's idea, but then we just sort of built on it.
I just think it's that whole like buying in the moment thing, because I've worked in the seminar business, and I've certainly been to conferences where, in the moment you're so motivated and inspired, and then you're like, what was that website again, when you get home, or you don't want to wait in the back of the room to buy the book, yeah, I think that's interesting.
And one place we found is really useful is anybody who does like especially say missionaries or pastors, someone who's got sort of a ministry nonprofit thing going on, and that's not only in the church, but that could be your feeding kids or anything that's that nonprofit thing. So often those folks live and die by that inspirational speaker who's going to motivate people to cough up a couple bucks to send another textbook to Africa, and you got to get them right in that instant.
What are the costs for developing an ego app like that? I mean, we were, one of the things that we brought up earlier was the expense of developing a console game, that is very, very expensive. But for jumping into the ego app, if you're a professional speaker, and you want to have an ego app developed for your own business, what are we looking at?
We have a couple different levels, because different people want different things. And so if you have, there's sort of a templated version where we can say, these are the specific things that you get, and you provide us artwork and some URLs and that sort of stuff. And then you're looking probably around $5,000 for that to get it live and ready. But then the more customized you get, really the sky's the limit. Although I can't imagine someone spending more than, say, about 20 for all the custom features you can imagine. That could be, maybe I don't want, for example, it to go to my blog. I want this to link to my video podcast thing. And so we had these other features that you can add on for additional money. So somewhere between 5 and 20.
Now, in your experience, how are people, most of the folks distributing their apps? Are they paid apps, or do you have any experience with folks going down the ad-supported route?
Ad-supported is very popular, and especially when you know that your app is designed to have people looking at it on a regular basis, ads can actually be a really great way to fund it. But what we've sort of imagined the app to be is more as a tool to help sell whatever you're selling, whether that's fundraising or maybe you're a politician looking for donations, that sort of stuff. Mm-hmm. And just knowing that you have that word of mouth thing going for you, it acts as partially a marketing cost, which is always a little bit hard to manage on an ROI perspective, but also that ability to capture revenue right in the moment. So the folks who've been looking at it and using it seem to feel that the turnaround on that has been very, very positive. It's not the thing that pays for itself, in one event, but over the course of a couple months, if you're pretty active, it usually pays for itself. So it's really good for that.
Well, it seems like such a terrific opportunity, and boy, at that sort of level of entry to get in on creating a promotional tool that is so that can be so valuable. I think that's a pretty terrific way to start a new arm of your business.
Well, we and you can really, what's nice is it's got some long time. It lasts for a long time. Where so long as people are using their iPhone, you can easily make additional updates. And that's, free to your users as far as your schedule changes. If you're an author, that's another real popular category where that fifth column is a place where you can sell your books, ebooks, mm-hmm. and they can download additional books as downloads, and that kind of stuff can just grow as you grow.
Chris, this has been so. I feel like we could talk about this stuff for much longer, but we have taken up much of your valuable time, and we just so appreciate you joining us to chat about the market, the economy, the app economy. You've got such great expertise in this, and we hope you'll join us again and pick up where we left off. So, where would you like people to find you if they'd like to learn more about all the good stuff that you guys are doing? The one site is code-monkeys, plural.com, and the other is somagames.com, just one word. So code-monkeys.com and somagames.com to learn all the great stuff about Chris Skaggs and what he and his team are up to. There are some great examples of the iPhone apps that you can get into and what it means to grow your own iPhone app with a great partner like CodeMonkeys. So thanks again, Chris, for your time and attention today. We truly appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
I like that, Chris Skaggs. He's such a good sport to come on and share his wisdom with us. Lots of cool opportunities in the app space. What do you say?
Yeah, I'm blown away by just the breadth of things that he does and knows about. It's interesting, and I really like we don't know how to do this, but we're willing to give it a shot.
I love that they put that in an ad. That's priceless.
Love that. And it's great because, it's not been a really fabulous economy for the last few years, but wow, what a thing to watch. And I'm glad to have somebody like that on the show because it gives us a bit of a look into this really dynamic area of growth in the technology world.
Absolutely. And speaking of other great areas of growth in the technology world, last week we had the tool on the show was the latest Evernote update because they added some significant new features to the Evernote client. We're big fans of Evernote here on the show, and we this week only a week late. The wonderfully talented and brilliant Andrew Sinkov has agreed to join us once again to walk us through some of these changes and answer a few of our questions about it. So I feel like we can actually say we have a friend of the show because we have Andrew Sinkov from Evernote who has been on the show once and agreed to come back and talk to us again.
Oh, I'm so happy to do it.
Oh, it's really great. It justifies everything we do. But we're here for a very special reason. Last week we were, this was our tool for the week. Because Evernote again was our tool for the week because it's awesome, and second because you launched a significant update in the Evernote Trunk service. What is Trunk?
Well, the Evernote Trunk is, besides just an amazingly clever word, it's basically a showcase of all of the amazing integrations that have come about over the past couple of years. We have over 2,000 developers working with our technology to build these amazing integrations, and we wanted to showcase them. And so we built this thing called the Trunk, which is available in Mac and Windows versions of Evernote on the web and on iPad, that allows people to see all of the great ways that they can make their Evernote experience more awesome by working with some of these partner products that are out there.
These partner products, which have been, like you said, which have been around for years, but frankly, I mean, I as an Evernote user for years, I haven't really explored any of them. I think I'm probably not alone. A lot of these things kind of sit invisible unless you're already a fan of them.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And that was the main impetus behind this whole project, was that what happens is, we would talk about a given integration on our blog, and we would tweet about it, and we would, get our community excited. And then that would sort of fade away as new users would come in. They wouldn't necessarily see that. So what we wanted to do was we wanted to bring all of these integrations front and center for all of our users. And so now really everybody can see all the great stuff that's out there.
Well, it really is. It really is terrific. I'm on the iPad version right now, and it's, just beautiful. What are some of your favorite? What do you call them? Do you call them apps or?
There are, they're integrations. These are the thing is that they're all different, right? So they're different categories. They go from mobile applications. There's a ton of hardware stuff from scanner companies, companies like iFi, phone companies. There's software that's on your desktop. So they cross a bunch of different categories. Some of my favorites are, I'm really excited about things like voice transcription. So we've added a bunch of partners now that provide voice transcription services. So a person can either call a phone number or associate their account with, for example, Dial to Do is one of these companies. And what they'll do is they will transcribe either a portion or an entire section of your of an audio note and bring it back to you as text, which is searchable, so people can leave voice notes and then have the text there available for them. It's really cool.
That is really cool. It sort of brings up, and I can't remember if we talked about this in the interviews, but it's a question I think this explicitly brings up for me, which is how, when you see all these great innovations and integrations that are going on with Evernote, how do you guys make the decision whether or not you're going to add about how you manage what features you build into core Evernote versus that you leave as an integration partner? Because it's something that Apple gets into all the time. They're constantly pilfering other developers' ideas. It seems like.
Well, that's a really great question, one that's really kind of central to Evernote. The way that we think about our product is that we are really focused on this one thing, which is helping people remember everything. And we have a roadmap that includes, a ton of work on improving that. And we're growing our team here to make it, even better. And we have so many plans for the product. But the truth is that even with all these plans and even with our growing team, we couldn't possibly do all the stuff that we want to do. But also there are tons of great ideas out there that we've never thought of. And that's what we're seeing in the developer community. So we're just excited by everything that's out there. And to date, everything that we've put out there are things that we're really excited to showcase to our users. It's not necessarily things that we would have time to do. Great example of that is a product called Egret List. This is a developer out of Puerto Rico that uses Evernote and said, man, I love Evernote, but their task management is just not really that great. So what I want to do is I want to improve the to-do capabilities of Evernote by building an application directly on top of Evernote's checkboxes. So you can create checkboxes in Evernote. This great iPhone app called Egret List pulls those checkboxes automatically, turns them into these really attractive to-do lists. Great idea. We just don't have the time to do it. They did it. They're making money because they did it. So it's fantastic.
Oh, that's great.
It's so pretty. So my question is, how many of the universe of all these new, well, not applications, but what did we just decide they're called? Integrations. In this whole universe of integrations, like what percentage of them do you say, okay, yeah, these are going to go into our trunk? I mean, do you have, are there just huge waiting list of developers developing these little things and wanting you to put them in the trunk, or are these the people you've been working with for a while, or what are the trends you're seeing there?
Yeah, so we've got, I mean, our plan and our hope is that we're going to have, a handful of new integrations show up every week, every couple of weeks. And we basically, the way that we look at it is we want to put as much into the trunk as we possibly can. We want the quality to be high enough, so we do curate the trunk. So we go over and make sure that the apps work and that they provide a function that's useful. So far, that's true of the majority of them. So basically, we will often go back to a developer and say, I think this is not that different from what someone like Apple would do. Is they go back to the developer and they say, hey, the thing doesn't work quite like you've advertised. Why don't you fix a few things and make it a little better? That's a very standard approach. We definitely don't want to give our users recommendations for products that aren't, up to par.
Sure.
Or that could, potentially do something weird with their data or something. So we want to make sure that everything in there is, we've checked, we've approved, it works, and we're happy with.
Well, I'm so glad you said that because of Dane. He has a question.
Because of me.
Because of Dane. Dane.
Yeah. Well, and so after we talked about this last week, I thought, great. And Pete Pete was sort of running down a list, sort of a little bit like we did here. But there's this, but none of us had tried anything. And the one that jumped out was the dial to do, voice to note. And I thought, man, I mean, that's something I'd really love to have integrated, and is something I've kind of been looking for as a good, convenient, voice transcription kind of software that I can use. So that's the only one actually that I went straight in, looked for, downloaded it, and started to go through the activation process. So my question is, through that process, one of the little questions is, are you willing to give them, it looks to me like unfettered access to all of your notes for the next 365 days, which I guess is partly how they work, because they want to comb through and look see if there's like a voice note that they can transcribe for you. So
Right.
I felt a little nervous about that. I don't know. What do you think about? I mean, has that been a problem for anybody else? I mean, should it be a red flag for me?
I think it's always fair to kind of be vigilant about those types of things. Now, the way that any of our API partners or any of the integrations work is that you're allowing, it's same thing as like with Twitter or something. Whenever you connect your Twitter client to, let's say, Twitterific or some other thing, or TweetDeck, you kind of have to go through that approval process that says like, yep, I approve this, this application accessing my data. It's the same thing here. You're basically saying that you're okay with, in this case, dial to do, or the same is true for most of the partners, that you're okay with them accessing your data for the purpose of the application that they're running. You can always go into your settings on Evernote Web, and you can disallow that. So you can say, okay, I don't want this to be the case anymore, and you can turn that off. But this is sort of the way that these things function. So Dial to Do is a perfect example of this. That app is providing a fantastic function around voice transcription, and one of the cool things that they do is they will go into your account, find any voice notes that you have, and then pull them out, transcribe them, put them back in with transcription. They need access to your data.
Sure.
That's kind of the way it works. So in order for that product to function, that's how it has to go. And you can always, it's up to you. If you're not comfortable with that, you certainly shouldn't. But in order to get this really, really useful service, that's what you're going to have to allow.
What would it take to get the words "Get over yourself, Dane" added to the legalese?
No, here's the thing. I got over it,
Yeah.
and I did it, and I gave it access, making the assumption that, as you just said, like, well, you can go in and disallow that at some point. But what I went through in my head when this happened, when I get this page that says, they've got to get in and do that, it went like I had to sort of shift gears mentally from like a lazy kind of like, okay, I'm adding an app, great, this will be fun, to whoa, now wait a minute. All right, so I know I trust Evernote. Now Evernote is suggesting this service. Now I don't know anything about Dial to Do as a company. I've never done anything with them, but I trust Evernote, so I think I'm probably okay here. So had I found dial to do on my own, and if before trunk there already existed some way to integrate that, but I would have had to take a different path, I probably wouldn't have had enough sort of trust there right at that moment without at least doing a little more research. I didn't do any additional research because, again, I felt like they were getting the okay by you guys, therefore it was okay. So,
which is part of the point of the App Store too, is to give that sort of trusted third party a voice. I have one more question because I know we've gone way too long and taken up way too much of your time, but I have one more question which I think is so great and we haven't talked about it yet. It's this idea of notebooks.
Oh yeah, we have to talk about that.
We really do. My first, the idea is you go into Trunk, you click on the Notebooks tab, and you see these third-party publishers who are publishing these notebooks of great information that will sync into your Evernote account. Am I getting it right?
Exactly. That's exactly right. We're just so this idea it's very different, right, from anything that you've seen from us before. Evernote as a content distribution platform is not the way that most people would think of the product. But we've been working with these with a few of our favorite blogs and publishers. That's Make Magazine, Cool Hunting, California Home and Design, Black Book, and a couple of others, to provide our users with curated exclusive content that with like 1 or 2 clicks you can get into your Evernote account as a notebook of stuff, of projects or ideas or travel tips. It's really great.
So first thing I think is, as a content publisher, what does it take to publish a notebook for other people to integrate into their Evernote experience? Is that on the roadmap?
Well, so that's essentially what this functionality is. Right. So you work with us in the beginning. Down the road, I don't know what our plans are. Down the road, we may make this simpler. But right now, if you're interested as a publisher in being added to the Evernote trunk, you contact us. There's a form on our website. And basically, we work with you to bring together some content. The content could be new content. It could be content that already exists somewhere online. But the idea is that these publishers are now getting access to our almost 3.75 million users. And these are users that probably have never heard of their publications, or a large portion probably have not heard of them. And at the same time, so besides getting the exposure, for our users, this becomes sort of a starting point. So I think of like the Make Magazine Home and Garden notebook as a great example of this. That is a DIY notebook that's going to be the starting point for all of your DIY projects going forward. And that becomes sort of a branded experience that's branded by Make, even if that contains stuff that you found on your own or ideas that you have outside of the notebook itself.
It's
so
cool. It's really, really cool. And how's the feedback been so far, folks, over the last week?
It's been great. I think that we've never done, so we were really excited because, personally, I was very excited because this was Evernote's first press conference. We had a press event. We made a lot of hay about this because it was, and people don't really do press conferences, as it turns out. But it became, we got a ton of attention. I think generally from the media, there's this understanding of the kind of the direction where we're headed, which is moving slightly away from being solely an app and being really a platform. As you can see, we've got like 2,000 developers, all these different apps that are in the trunk already. Evernote is becoming basically a memory platform. And we want to showcase that. And that's what the media is really understanding this. Our users are excited about getting access to all of these new applications and new uses. So we are thrilled.
Well,
That's awesome.
It is really cool, and boy, we just thank you for taking the time today. Congrats on a great release.
Great, thanks for having me.
And that's all we have this week for the Naked Marketers. Thank you so much for joining us. As for us, Dane, where would you like people to go find you if they want to learn more about all the wonderful things you're doing?
I'd like them to go to strike10media.com, and I want them to get really excited about the fact that I'm now using Mars Edit, and what I post on strike10media.com is going to be populating some other social media platforms I'll be able to discuss in the future.
Like Orkut?
No, probably Facebook. Maybe Twitter.
Oh.
But Mars Edit is awesome.
It is awesome. Congratulations on moving up.
To that tool, Pete. Mars Edit is awesome.
I am so glad to hear you doing that. That is a great testimonial for Mars Edit, that even Dane uses Mars Edit.
Yeah.
But
I
whatever
just-
that means. Megan Strand, where do you want people to find you?
I hang out on Twitter quite a bit at Megan Strand, and my blog
annoyingly so, yeah.
annoyingly so.
Oh, way too much. You guys.
Wow, that
social
is from
media.
somebody who doesn't even log
That's
into Twitter.
why
so
I did.
Would you know?
I'm just poking at you.
Oh, snap. Okay.
Oh,
Go ahead.
no.
Where's it? What? Finish
I
your
don't
finish
know
your
where
plug.
my website is. I'm all flustered now, Dane. I'm
Deserved
at
it. That's all I'm saying.
encouraged.com, which is INCOURAGED.
Outstanding. And I am at Pete Wright on Twitter. Please follow me. I would love it. And at fifthandmain.com, all written out. That's my website, www.fifthandmain.com. Come by there from time to time. I write about all sorts of stuff like Apple. And the show, you can learn a lot more about the show at Naked Markets, at Naked Markets on Twitter, and www.thenakedmarketers.com, where you can catch up with all of our back episodes and subscribe to us in the iTunes Store, which is the best way to make sure that you don't miss a single episode. And I think that's all we have. Anything else from you people?
I think that's it. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for
I
joining us,
just want
everybody.
people to stay sexy.
Stay sexy. Sexy. See, that's where I just start repeating and don't even think about what's going to come out of my mouth. Okay. On behalf of Dane and Megan, I am Pete Wright, and this has been another Hillariawesome episode of The Naked Marketers. What was that?
Hillariawesome.
It was great.
You know, I totally stole that from Neil Patrick Harris. I should actually credit Neil Patrick Harris.
Credit Neil Patrick Harris. How quickly can you say that?
Credit Neil Patrick Harris, 2010.